Welcome to Conversations on the Coast, San Francisco's premier author interview program. And today we are going to be talking about a very different book, a very beautiful book. The title of the book is Burning Book, and the subtitle is Most Important, A Visual History, it says, of Burning Man. The author is Jessica Bruder. It's published by Simon Spotlight Entertainment, which is an imprint of Simon & Schuster. What a mouthful. Thanks for coming by.
Thank you for having me, Jim.
You know, we're going to talk about this unusual book, and strangely, we're going to start right on the title page. Because on the title page, it gives us this clue about the visual history of Burning Man. And then it says, featured photography by N.K. Guy, or Guy, Tim Timmermans, Stuart Harvey, Rick Egan, and many others. And it is a total, beautiful, full-color visual package. How did you corral all those cats?
It was a lot of work. I had help from a photo researcher, thankfully. But basically, we put the narrative together first. I did well over 100 interviews, got that text together, and once we had that arc and that structure, I started thinking about what we wanted both conceptually for an overall arc of those photos and what we needed to match the text, and then just what we wanted in terms of what would be gorgeous. So photo researcher and I reached out to a lot of people. We've got over 30 photographers in this book. I have a few pictures in there too, but mine are far from the best. And yeah, it was a kaleidoscope.
It's perhaps simple way to describe the book is that it reports or it chronicles a happening that began right here in San Francisco in 1986 at Baker Beach. What happened?
Well, back in 1986, Larry Harvey, who was a sometime landscaper, bookish college dropout, and his friend Jerry James, who was a carpenter, got together, were looking for something to do. They built an 8-foot-tall effigy out of wood scraps, which really didn't look like all that much. They took it down to the beach. They baptized it with a fair amount of gasoline, and they set it on fire. That was what they did. It drew a fair amount of attention on the beach.
They did it the next concept. Year. Hey, guy, let's go to the beach and set this thing on fire. But that's the way this whole incredible thing happened. And now there's something called the Burning Man Festival. It happens every year, and it will attract this year probably about 40,000 folks to go out and spend a week in Nevada's Black Rock Desert. And the interesting part about it is this custom you say here is so that looks simple if strange. Thousands of pilgrims arrive each summer, and this is a parched, forbidding stretch of alkali dust in northwestern Nevada. They build a temporary city around a wooden man. Strange folks. Then they set him on fire. And that flaming finale is an ultimate catharsis, something like Lord of the Rings on the 4th of July. It's also completely overwhelming in scale, casting a glow that lights thousands of faces. So this little thing on the beach really has exploded. Like, it's a pretty good word.
Yeah, well, it was the grain of an idea that got larger and larger. And
one of the interesting things about it is that if we were to suppose we're going to go to Burning Man, we'd get whatever car, vehicle, bus, van that we can, get our hands on, beg, borrow, or steal, and we're likely to stop in Reno. Why is that?
Well, Reno is really the closest large city, and considering that people come to Burning Man nowadays from all over the country and all over the world, it's the largest international airport. So it's kind of the last depot for people to fuel up, to get supplies. But it also offers a pretty strange contrast with the desert because it's so gaudy and so loud, and the desert is so austere that it's a little surreal to pass through Reno.
One of the interesting things is that when you get to the site itself, you can't buy anything except lattes.
You can get a latte, that is controversial.
I would imagine it would be because the whole spirit of the place is to fully share everything. Mm-hmm. And yet there now we're buying lattes.
Well, it's actually been that way for a long time, and there are people who will hand out coffee near the areas where you can buy those lattes to kind of subvert the cafe economy. So everything gets pranked out there. But
Good Lord. Now, the fixed cost for attending is buying the ticket that gets you through the door, which, I don't know, has it gotten to $300 this year?
it's a sliding scale. I think it should be up to $300. I bought tickets early. The sooner you buy them after they go on sale in the new year, just around January, the cheaper they are. And they can be, I know, $100 greater than the highest ticket price once you're at the gate. So it's good to buy quickly if you are interested in going.
The other thing you have to do if you want to go is be prepared to live by a creed. Pack it in, pack it out, leave no trace.
The Federal Bureau of Land Management actually has very serious standards for how clean that desert has to be when the event is done every year. People are out there for weeks doing what they call line sweeps, picking up every last sequin, every last pistachio nutshell. So the idea is it shouldn't hit the ground in terms of litter. You got to pick it up and clean as you go.
When I was reading that, I thought to myself how wonderful it would be if everybody used the desert that well. Okay, we're on the grounds of Burning Man. What does it feel like? What are some of the things we'll see? We'll find out stuff like that when we come back.
You're listening to Conversations on the Coast with Jim Foster. Now you can find this program on iTunes, SoundCloud, and all your favorite digital outlets. Follow the show on Twitter at JimFosterCoc and email jimfostercoc@gmail.com.
Burning Book, A Visual History of Burning Man. That's the title we're dealing with today. The author, Jessica Bruder, is with us. The publisher, Simon's Spotlight Entertainment. I was wondering when we were between segments, Jessica, is it if I wanted to go to Burning Man this year, could I still?
You could. There's the Burning Man website at www.burningman.com does have a list of local walk-in outlets where you can buy tickets. They do have
walk-in outlets?
Shops that carry them. I mean, it's not an outlet explicitly for Burning Man tickets, but just stores like I think
That's
there's a hat
like
there's a hat
Ticketron.
store in Berkeley, for example, that I believe carries
A
tickets.
what store?
A hat store.
A hat store.
A hat shop. Where
Okay,
you can buy
that's fine.
your Burning Man ticket.
Now, if I wanted to go, and I've never done this before, and I've recently been to the desert, so I know what hot is a little bit. What do you, I mean, does Burning Man supply you with a list of things to do and get and buy?
There is a survival guide that
Okay.
comes out by mail.
All
There
right.
are lists of recommendations on the website because you really need to bring it with you. You won't be able to buy it when you're out there.
That's right.
So-
Okay. And it's all, once you get the ticket, then you get,
Yeah.
okay. I'm not sure. I'm not sure. Well, at any rate, to, sell me on this idea, let's take a walk. We've gotten the vehicle there.
Sure.
And I guess by this time we've unloaded our, quote, campsite.
Uh-huh.
And now we're going to stroll around. What is it we're likely to run into or see?
Well, you'll notice that once you park your car, nobody's driving ordinary cars anymore, and you probably won't be driving your car for the rest of the week. People are driving around in all manner of contraptions, art cars.
Art cars.
Art cars. You might see some electric cupcakes motoring by. You might see a large banana. The idea is if you'd like to get around...
The pink burning slippers.
Bunny slippers.
Bunny slippers.
Yes.
Yes.
The pair of bunny slippers.
I'm
Those
kind
are-
of looking forward to that.
those are some of my favorites.
I like that kind of charming thing. Pink. I think I'd look good in pink bunny slipper car. Now, the other thing is we might run into some of the, if you will, characters of Burning Man. One of my faves is a fellow by the name of Matty Nash, who went out there once with an idea. And what happened?
Well, Matty basically went out there with a set of drums and found that when he played, he could get a lot of people who would want to just come by and join the fray. He ended up going out there with a flaming drum kit one year. He basically built a gong stand with flamethrowers, and every year, kind of like in the style of a potluck supper, it would get larger and larger until it ended up growing into a full-fledged theatrical performance troupe called the Mutator that's still successful today out of Los Angeles.
The interesting thing about that is that I think what happened with him bespeaks the spirit in the sense that it started out relatively small, a small set of drums, And then that evolved, first of all, immediately into getting other people involved. The band has a kind of a motto, changing civilians into rock stars. And once he got into that, then everybody could bring his drum or anything and become part of making music.
Oh, I agree with you. I think Burning Man is very democratic and very populist in that way, and that once you're there, it's not that the artists do the entertaining and everybody else kind of sits and folds their hands and watches, but the idea is that there shouldn't be any spectators, that boundary between performer and audience should break down to the point where everybody's entertaining each other.
In terms of getting around, you mentioned that you can climb aboard a neon disco bus, hop on a motorized flying carpet, chase after a wheeled dragon waving your arms like a castaway until it slows down to pick you up. Hitchhiking en masse, however, is more difficult. Again, a gentleman from San Francisco attempted to solve the en masse problem of getting around. What was his name?
Well, there was Simon Cheffins and Greg Jones, a whole crew of people on this project, really.
And the Extra Action Marching Band.
Indeed.
And they eventually created
a half-scale replica of a 16th century Spanish galleon built on the frame of a school bus, which you couldn't see because it was so well hidden.
Built on the frame of a school bus, yeah.
Well, you couldn't see the school bus.
No, it's hidden.
It's really artfully done. Sure, you could see those wheels gliding over the ground, but that was about it.
And this vessel is called La Contessa, and it gets a lot of people around at one time, mostly members of the
that
band.
Marching band.
Oh, dear. Burning Book, A Visual History of Burning Man, tells the whole story, even the parts that don't seem to fit. Stay tuned.
You're listening to Conversations on the Coast with Jim Foster. Now you can find this program on iTunes, SoundCloud, and all your favorite digital outlets. Follow the show on Twitter at JimFosterCoc and email JimFosterCoc@gmail.com.
This is Jim Foster. The title today is Burning Book, A Visual History of Burning Man. The author, Jessica Bruder, is with us. The book is published by Simon Spotlight Entertainment, a imprint of Simon & Schuster. They'll be very pleased to hear that. They really, really will. The founder of Burning Man is a gentleman we mentioned before, Larry Harvey, and he said someplace, Burning Man, allows people to be as foolish as they please. It allows them to do things that they needn't justify or rationalize, simply because they feel a pressing need to express themselves in some way. And Harvey's statement, which is one of the most, doesn't seem to fit, it seems to me, with one of the more unexpected pieces of your story. The part of your story that has to do with Camp Katrina, which I find absolutely amazing. Take us back to the summer of 2005. Sure.
Basically, news travels very slowly out in the desert. You can't use cell phones out there just because they don't reach. So news of Hurricane Katrina came very slowly, and it kind of spread like a rumor from camp to camp. Nobody was sure quite what happened or how bad it was. But when people realized what was going on, a bit of despair set in. There was definitely a note of, oh my gosh, we're all out here in the desert. What are we going to do? How is what we're doing relevant right now? And how can we be relevant to the wider world in the wake of this disaster?
Yeah, why are we having such a good time in the desert when there are people whose houses are underwater and people are literally dying?
Sure.
And so what can we do? And what happened was that a fellow by the name of Seth Schoenfeld came up with an idea. I guess it was his idea, Burners Without Borders.
Oh, actually, Seth was just one of many people who participated in that project. There were people down there earlier, and it's definitely a group effort.
They went to Mississippi.
They did.
And they did set up this thing called Camp Katrina. And what did they accomplish? Well, a few weeks after the festival ended, you write, Seth went down to Mississippi where some burners were starting a new art project, renovating a ruined Buddhist temple. Vietnamese immigrants in Biloxi had spent almost 2 decades raising enough money to build the temple. The day after it was consecrated, Hurricane Katrina bore down as the monks prayed inside. The Burners Without Borders team completed the temple, demolished 60 houses, hauled away tons of debris, working first in Biloxi, then building a more elaborate camp in Pearlington. New volunteers arrived, exhausted ones left. Every Saturday night they burned artwork. They like to burn things. They burned artwork made of scrap salvaged from the disaster around them. This went on for nearly 7 months.
Yep.
And then, like what happens in the desert, they went away. They went back to their homes and their ordinary pursuits. But what a wonderful achievement.
And it's amazing how they could take the skills that are used to build a temporary encampment in the middle of a really harsh desert environment and take that to an area that had just been devastated. Some of the same survival, running off of generators, setting up shade, working on nothing type skills really came into play, I think.
Well, here we are many years after the first burning on Baker Beach here in San Francisco, and we have the Burning Man with a lot of questions. Should the Burning Man become a movement? One of the things that they're thinking about. What do you think?
Well, some people believe it already is. Some people really think that it's integrated in part of their lifestyle, that when you say you go to Burning Man, that implies a certain set of values, a certain set of ethics, a certain dedication to creativity. A lot of other people say, look, I already have that.
And a certain laissez-faire.
Sure, live and let live, definitely.
Yeah.
And other people are more reticent to put that under the label of Burning Man, to say, look, this is my life, and I'm living that way, and I go to Burning Man.
It's just my summer vacation,
but
so to speak.
But this is what I do, and it jives with my ethics, but it's an event, not a lifestyle.
There's also a question of size. People are asking, is it too big?
Sure. Well, one of the things that's happened, it's definitely... It was more anarchic in the early days, as you can guess.
It was more what?
There was a little more anarchy. When you had 7,000 people,
yeah,
you didn't have as many rules as you do at 40,000 people.
Yeah.
And the same sense of intimacy, it changes, because I think you get more intimacy within given encampments of people than you do from the festival at large. So it's changing. Yeah. Can it get too big? Well, what's too big? The art now is probably more sophisticated than the art 10 years ago. So if that's what you go for, perhaps that's something that intrigues you. But it's a different feel, to be sure.
What about expenses? Is it too expensive?
It really depends on where you're coming from.
Now that we're charging for lattes,
you can still... Nobody is going to get in your way if you want to make your own latte, Jim. Nobody, least of all me.
But the expense still is only the price of the ticket.
Mm-hmm. So it's a few $100s. Well, it's probably between $2 and $3 right now to get the ticket, and then, whatever you bring.
We've been talking about a most unusual book. It's called Burning Book, A Visual History of Burning Man. The author is Jessica Bruder. This has been Conversations on the Coast, and I'm Jim Foster.
Now you can find this program on iTunes, SoundCloud, and all your favorite digital outlets. Follow the show on Twitter at Jim Foster COC and email jimfostercoc@gmail.com.